Hey guys, Rachel Pelisson here. I wanted to come on and share my tips for going grain-free on medical medium protocol. And I recently decided to make the commitment to go grain-free, and mostly to help, to see if it would help with my skin, because I was getting some breakouts as part of my detox symptoms. And so I got to the point where I felt like, all right, it's time to get a little more serious about addressing strep. So grains can feed strep bacteria, and so by eliminating grains, you eliminate the food source for strep, and then you lower the bacteria counts and your symptoms get better. So I don't know if you can tell, but I get like right here, I get like some breakouts and acne, and I've been grain free for about 5 days, and it's so much better already. Like, I'm shocked. So my grain intake was pretty low already. Like, I was probably having 1 serving a day. And for me personally, animal products, meat, eggs, and dairy, except for maybe cheese, were really easy to give up. Cheese was a little harder. It's harder for everyone. But giving up the animal products was easy, but for me, grains were harder. I was already like kind of vegetarian, knew the benefits of going plant-based, and so meat was easy to give up for me, but grains were way harder. So it's taken me like over a year to really get to the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna really make the commitment and do this, and I am like shocked at the results. It's really amazing. So getting rid of grains can help heal any issues that are caused by strep bacteria. So those are things like ear infections, cystic acne, UTIs, BV, bacterial vaginosis, GI conditions associated with strep, like irritable bowel syndrome, or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, styes that you get in your eyes, chronic sore throats, sinusitis, ear infections. So a lot of issues related to strep. And we all have strep in our systems because we've all had strep throat. We've all had an ear infection or a sty or a UTI. We've all been exposed to antibiotics, whether we've taken them or we've gotten them secondhand through meat, because the animals are given antibiotics. They're also in our water supply, so we're all getting exposed to antibiotics all the time. And that strep keeps getting stronger and stronger because the antibiotics kill off the weakest strep, and you're left with the strongest strains. So if you remove their fuel source, then you don't, which is partly grains, also the rest of the no foods, eggs, dairy, corn, soy, canola, natural flavors, pork, and gluten. So when you remove all those foods and you go totally grain-free, you really remove the food supply for strep, so that really promotes healing. So what are grains? The gluten-containing grains are the most offensive for feeding strep and any other kind of pathogens. That's wheat, rye, and barley. So I've had those on my diet for a long time. The grains that are safest to eat are quinoa and millet. So if you're still consuming some grains, those are the best. The third best grain is short brown rice. That can feed some pathogens, but not, or some strains of bacteria, but not all of them. So that's one that I was still having, and I have recently cut out and seen these big changes. And corn is another one that's part of the no foods, but corn is also a grain, so that should be avoided on a grain-free diet. So I've seen results really quickly on this grain-free diet, and part of the reason I've seen that is because I've been spending a lot of time really focused on liver healing, a lot of time supporting my immune system. I've had the no foods out for a long time, so my response was pretty quick. So if you are new to this healing journey and you haven't been eating low fat and you have been eating no foods, it might take a little bit longer, but you will get results from eliminating grains. So eliminating grains sounds easier than it might be, or maybe it sounds really hard and scary. So I'm going to give you my top 10 tips for how to substitute and what else you can eat instead. So I usually find when you're trying to take foods out of the diet, it's most important to focus on what you're going to add in and not just what you're going to take out. So, right, we always want to focus on the positive, focus on the healing, and not focus on restriction and removal and cutting things out. So the number one thing for me is to eat more potatoes. Potatoes are like your best friend in terms of substituting grains because they give you that starchy, they give you that chewy, they're kind of like the closest plant food. They're really satisfying, they're very calorie dense. So for me, part of my struggle in eliminating grains was I was really relying on it as a source of calories. So in just being mindful of adding more potatoes, like I'm having potatoes twice a day right now to make up for the calorie count for my grains. And so for me, my calorie needs are pretty high. Like I'm at about 2,500 calories a day because I'm fairly active and I'm breastfeeding my toddler. So for others, it might be a little easier. You might not need as many potatoes because your calorie needs may not be quite that high. But for me, like that was a game changer. So all different kinds of potatoes. They have high lysine content, which is antiviral. They're a wonderful healing food. They're very grounding. Everybody likes potatoes, right? Little kids, old people, everybody. So make potato cakes, make mashed potatoes, make oven baked fries, make hash browns, make tater tots, make potato waffles, everything you can think of for potatoes. Like just go for it, get them in there. I also like to use cauliflower rice, which is a great substitute if you want to do any kind of like Asian dishes that you would usually use rice for like stir fries or fried rice or anything like that. They also make a bunch of other riced vegetables now that I've seen in the freezer section, like butternut squash and stuff, so that could be a good alternative. There's a lot of great grain-free pastas out there now, so I like the Felicia green pea pasta. My daughter loves that one. Bonza chickpea pasta is great. You can find that in a lot of places. There's also lentil pastas. So there's a lot of options. Just experiment with which one you like the best. Another thing I like to do is to use really thinly sliced potatoes in place of bread. So like if you're making a bruschetta or if you want to dip in something and you're like craving that chewy bread thing, so slice some russet potatoes thin, bake them on parchment paper at like 425 till they get crispy, and those are like a great substitute for bread. I'm peeking at my cheat sheet here so I don't forget any of these. So I have all these tips in an article too if you prefer to read them, or if you want to print them out, you can go to my website. I'll put the link in the section below. So ideally you want to be eating as many whole plant foods as possible, but I did include some packaged foods on this list because I don't know, that's life. Like we need, like, I don't know, I still use a little bit of packaged foods here and there, and you know, if you have kids and they're accustomed to packaged foods or their friends are eating packaged foods, it's nice to have options for them. So almond flour crackers are great from Simple Mills. They have a couple different flavors. Those are grain-free. Those are pretty high in fat, but I think as you're transitioning, if you need a little more fat just to kind of get you over the hump and get you used to it, for me that's okay. So again, with my calorie needs being so high, I'm eating a little more avocado right now, just as I transition and get used to not eating grains. Especially if you're feeling hungry, you want to make sure you're getting more calorie dense foods in. So smoothies are great for that. Bananas, dried fruits like dates and figs. Dried mango is one of my absolute favorite dried fruits, and it's really helpful for sleep because it has a high bioavailable magnesium in it. So I love to have a dried mango snack before bed. You can use grain-free wraps. So Siete makes grain-free tortillas. They also make grain-free tortilla chips that are pretty delicious. Again, these are a little higher in fat, and they're processed, so use them in moderation, but they are a good alternative, and they're great to use for your family members. So if your kids are used to having tacos or quesadillas or something, you can just swap these out pretty easily and nobody will notice. If you have a party and you want to have chips, get some of the Siete chips. There's a great recipe on Medical Medium website for sweet potato tortillas. You could try making those and then freeze them. So you can have, you just pop them out of the freezer and put them in the pan to heat them up. Using greens for wraps is really good too. So you can use collards or kale for a wrap, or cabbage, or butter leaf lettuce. It kind of comes in that round already, so it makes great wraps. You can also make potato pizza crust. That one is delicious. I'm working on finalizing my recipe for that, so I'll have that up on my website soon. But if you just Google potato pizza crust, you'll find some recipes. And then like the most important thing I think is to plan ahead. So don't just say, I'm going to stop eating grains and stop buying them, because then you're going to go to that meal where you usually eat them and be like, oh, what do I eat? I'm hungry. Like, this sucks. So think of what you can do instead, and you can start incorporating those foods before you start phasing out the other ones. So for me, that was transitioning from, I used to eat a lot of Raisin Bran for breakfast, and now I've swapped to a smoothie. Sandwiches, I kind of just swapped over to salads with potatoes on them. Talked about wraps and pizza. So think about where those grains are in your diet, and what foods you can use to swap out with them, or what foods you can start to add in that are grain-free and really delicious. So those are my tips, and I hope that helps you, and I'll keep you guys updated on what happens with my healing my skin detox symptoms with going grain-free. And let me know in the comments where you are. Are you grain-free? Are you trying to go grain-free? Are you just working on gluten-free? Are you reducing your grains? Where you at? Let me know what kind of info you guys want, and I'll make more videos like this.